Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Chris Warren, the CEO of Clean Energy Advisors. Chris, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Devin.
Well, your firm is a real player in financing solar power, and I'm really excited about what you're doing because of the scale at which you're doing it. But tell us a little bit about Clean Energy Advisors to get us warmed up.
Be happy to, Devin. Thanks again for having me today. And Clean Energy Advisors, essentially, our overall objective is to help facilitate the rapid deployment of solar PV or solar energy projects across the United States and elsewhere in the Caribbean and Latin America. Our focus is primarily on utility scale solar projects, and the biggest problem, Devin, in that space is the funding. And so we are extremely innovative in structure and in flexibility, and have had the good fortunes to put together some opportunities to bring a lot of investors to the table to move some projects along, and ultimately with the objective being to facilitate more clean energy in the country.
Well, this is a huge economic opportunity. Setting aside the environmental benefits of solar power, a huge economic opportunity. We are very near, Chris, I believe. You tell me what you think. I think we're very near a point where it makes sense to decommission a coal-fired power plant and replace that with solar because solar is getting so cheap. What's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. We're almost there. We're absolutely getting closer every day. Price of solar equipment has come down. One of the largest aspects of a solar project overall installation cost is related to not just the equipment, but the soft costs, the construction, the permitting, the zoning, and all the different things that come in. And something that a lot of folks don't realize is in many cases up to 30% of the cost of a solar project might be tied up in the financing aspect of it. So that's one of the benefits and opportunities that we saw, and we have created some opportunity around that, is to bring a lower cost of capital to projects. It really helps us to facilitate that growth. You're pushing down the overall cost of solar in the solar installations, which ultimately makes it what we like to refer to as put it at grid parity. And it certainly makes solar a much more economically viable alternative energy source.
In a world where there is such tremendous redundancy across the grid, it seems to me to make sense to continue adding solar and to at least de-emphasize the coal and other fossil fuel sources for power. What are you seeing happening, in fact?
It's absolutely the case. Green energy. Removing as much dependence in our electricity needs in the United States away from fossil fuels, away from coal and all the negative environmental aspects that come from those plants. But in addition to that, when you put a lot of smaller scale solar projects or alternative energy projects across the grid, it just gives you a much better source of power. It really is making not only economic sense but long-term stability sense for the U.S. grid. So,
is that because you can move the power source closer to the power consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, that's the case. And it really creates a much more stable environment. Obviously, at this stage of the game, as solar and other technologies begin to gain more traction on the grid, there's some concern from the utility side. They're typically looking for profit as well, so we have some pushback from that end. But at the same time, they realize that having a smart and impactful distributed generation system is ultimately the good for all of us in the United States.
There are some implications there as we move and migrate more and more to solar, is that we're going to need to have a smarter grid that extends all the way into the home, right? So that and in factories, so that the grid can tell us when we can use power, right? At least for some of those operations that are high power, optional use kinds of things, like washing the dishes or firing up a process in a plant, right?
That's absolutely correct, and there's a lot of great technology happening and innovative ideas coming to the smart grid space. So we're extremely excited about that. It'll make the type of projects that we like to fund much more economically viable going forward. The other good part about that, you mentioned an important piece, which is, the good part about the sun is the maximum production is when we, as a country, need it the most. So, the sun is putting out more energy at any other time. So it kind of is a win-win from every situation.
How do you see wind coming into play? You told me offline you haven't financed any wind projects yet. Is the economic situation significantly different, or is wind just close behind solar?
No, in many ways, wind is it's just a different beast, and we certainly we are focused right now on solar because that's kind of where the timely opportunities from an investment standpoint reside. Long term, we see great amount of potential, not just in solar or wind, but in biomass, waste to energy. There's a lot of great clean technologies that are available. From a wind standpoint, the difference is most of those projects are extremely large by nature, and they take a very long time to develop. In wind is past us. And it will come back around as any other business cycle would, and that's why our focus right now is primarily on the solar side.
Well, it seems to me that as we transition to this phase where it makes economic sense to decommission coal-fired power plants, that your business is going to skyrocket, and that's wonderful for everyone when we start thinking about deploying solar at that sort of industrial scale, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And from our standpoint, it's more about the creation of the opportunities, and we're very fortunate at Clean Energy Advisors to be kind of right place at right time. There's a tremendous amount of interest in this space. There's so many folks. Obviously, 90% favorable towards clean energy and solar in particular. And with the economics, which we talked about, coming into play, the investment opportunities, are continuing to increase, and so we see great things ahead.
The opportunity associated with that, I think, as we look forward, creates really some exciting opportunities for your investors, and there will also be more and more projects that people are wanting to finance. Tell us a little bit about the kinds of projects you're financing with an eye toward the people who want to finance a project, right? So talk to that audience for a minute, and then talk a little bit about who your investors are, talking to that audience to make sure that people who are listening who might be investors can figure out how they might fit into your production, your product.
Sure, absolutely, and obviously, our role in the industry is to create those opportunities to bring investors and developers together. And Devin, one of the hardest parts about solar PV or any other alternative energy project is the funding aspect. And my take on it is this: we've been doing it a certain way for so long, and everybody's comfortable with that way, but it's an extremely archaic and inefficient way. And I always think, just because we're comfortable with something, it doesn't mean that there's not a better way out there. And that's effectively what Clean Energy Advisors has taken the forefront on. And there are other organizations, fortunately, in the industry that are doing the same thing, and you see some of that activity, in the markets today. But from our standpoint, we are, in many cases, out there acquiring projects from developers that have, good solid projects with good financials, but no resources to fund them and put them in the ground of those folks, and are happy to be that. On the other side of it, because of the economics we talked about with solar PV in particular, the pricing has come down substantially. We talked about our lower cost of capital on top of that. So effectively what we're able to do for the investment side or the investment community is to bring a very solid, high credit quality type of an investment. Obviously, the takeoffs for all of the power that's produced by the systems in most of the projects that we fund are the A-rated, AA-rated utility companies. In addition to that, the cash flows that are generated are long-term in nature, and they're very significant relative to today's markets for anyone looking for yield. And I'll just mention one other thing, Devin, which is the fact that, you know, in almost every case, there's tremendous tax benefits that are associated, at least in today's current environment, with these projects. And so we've found a pretty unique opportunity to create investment vehicles that allow our investors to participate not only in that long-term revenue stream, but also in the tax benefits that come with the projects.
Well, this is an exciting time to be you, Chris. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're excited. We get excited every day. It's almost hard to sleep when things are changing so rapidly around you, and for the better.
Yeah, well, this is a wonderful time, and it really gives me hope. We've agonized so long over global warming, climate change, and what we're seeing in what you're doing is that there can be really a large-scale, wholesale switch to renewables over the next decade, 2 or 3, that really will address this problem at scale. And we will no longer have to worry about can we drive to the grocery store, because of course we can drive to the grocery store. We're using solar power to do it, and it's cheap and it's low impact. So it is an exciting time to be you.
Thank you. We would just say that, you know, ultimately we're more excited about the opportunity to see solar power and other alternative energy sources in play. The impact that it makes is so measurable and it's real. And one of the things that can't happen, you know, you can't sit around and wait for things to happen. The government's not going to change. You know, the oil tycoons aren't going to come in and all of a sudden change their mind about fracking and all the other things that we in the environmental community, you know, talk about and worry about. It's a grassroots effort, and it's organizations like Clean Energy Advisors and others that are out there trying to figure out how do we make this thing happen and how do we move it forward. And I think, you know, with the support of the population and the support of investors and obviously the support of the development community, we're making it happen, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Well, fantastic. Chris, it's been great to visit with you. Before we go, tell people how to connect with you. What's the best way to reach you?
Well, Clean Energy Advisors is our organization, and you can certainly reach us on the web at www.cleanenergyadvisors.net. You can reach out to me personally, and happy to do so, on Twitter. I'm CEO Clean Energy on Twitter, and happy to have any conversations relative to what's happening in the industry. And we're all about spreading the word and helping folks to find opportunities in this space.
Well, terrific. Chris, thank you very much for joining us today, and continued luck. I'd wish you good luck, actually. You don't need it.
Well, we'll take it, though. Thank you, Devin.
You got the wind at your back, my friend. Congratulations, and good luck.
Thank you, sir.
All righty, let's do some good.